Tonight we're talking about the death penalty, a debate. I'm sure this happened at your dining room table here, and certainly it's interesting in the state of Connecticut that as we speak right now, the state legislature is really wrestling with this debate, and by this time tomorrow, it might be on the governor's desk where he's already said that if it comes to it, he'll repeal the death penalty in the state of Connecticut. It's also the site of one of the most heinous crimes that I can remember in recent memory, with the Pettit tragedy here, where two former cons went in, brutally rape and then murder and then burn the house down, with the mother and the two daughters, the father surviving, and obviously a major presence at the trial. And now someone's saying that that ultimate punishment should still be on the books. But what will the state do, and what should your state do is the question that we're asking. Let's go first to Sean. He's calling us from Westchester in New York. Sean, I'm going to put you in the legislature right now, and I'm going to give you a vote. Would you keep the death penalty law on the books, or would you repeal it because of the reasons Andrew and others said that if you make a mistake, you can never turn the clock back?
Well, look, I think one person was executed in Connecticut in '76 or something like that. But definitely, in my opinion, I would definitely probably vote to keep the death penalty, but sort of maybe speed up the process as to when they're executed. I mean, having people sit on death row for 20 or some odd years is sort of mind-boggling. But the fact that they need to be executed, I mean, they took they took the life of someone immediately, so why shouldn't they be executed immediately? I don't get it. But
I'll tell you why, Sean, and I'm curious to what your answer to this question is going to be. In Westchester, for example, you had the Deskovic case. Guy was sitting on death row, and then he was exonerated with DNA. If they speed up the case and he wasn't allowed to have, let's say, an appeal process or a multiple appeal process, what would you say if it turns out, geez, we killed the wrong guy, the guy never did it? Would you say, hey, it's just the price of doing business, or would that change your mind?
I think that would change my mind. I mean, using that specific scenario, sure, but I also would probably look at the fact of when the process of appeals, I think it's sort of 10 years and longer. You know, it's sort of a very grueling, honed out process. But I think ultimately, if you can change that, then you can ultimately start to change the fact that, yeah, people who are found guilty of murder or anything of that nature, they should be killed immediately, if you ask me. But
okay, but you know what I think that we're all struggling with, and Bill, is all murder's bad, all murder's final, but there are cases, and unfortunately in the news business we see them more often than most people, the wires that come across, that just, you can't finish the story. It makes your stomach turn. Or I don't want to even read it at night. It's just so disconcerting. That Pettit case, viscerally, for everybody, felt the same way. But then there's another case where if there's an armed robbery and then something goes bad and the guy kills somebody, lock him up and throw away the key, but if you're going to kill him, then you start to have this debate, how are we better than this guy? I mean, there are different kinds of murders, and it seems that Sean and others, they're not willing to make a distinction.
I think that's absolutely right. And as far as appeals, I would give anybody on death row every possible appeal they could have. It has to be exhausted. You have to be as sure as possible, because as Andrew says, you can't take that back once you do it. But it's a question that's been debated for 50 years in America. I mean, there's no easy answer.
DNA, though,
keep in mind, our justice system isn't supposed to be based on an eye for an eye. It's not supposed to be, because this was, it's supposed to be, we send prisoners to prisons, into the Department of Corrections, where we hopefully rehabilitate them. It's not designed just to be penal. It's not designed just to penalize.
It's a penal system. But Andrew, wait. We have to be real here. Are we still saying that people go to jail to be rehabilitated?
I'm saying that the original,
that's almost laughable.
Well, but the original foundation for why we send people to prison seems to have changed, and we seem to have gotten away from that. Do I wish we did more rehab in prisons? Absolutely, I do. But we seem to have taken the attitude, these people committed a crime, screw them. They lock them up.
What are they saying online? I'm curious.
Well, we got a couple of reactions in from our Facebook. We asked this online. Here's the one from Mike Krober. My apologies if I mispronounced that. You killed someone and there's no question you should die in return. Does it deter murder? Maybe, maybe not, but it deters that person from doing it again, 100%. That's a valid point right there. And then we'll move on to Carson Sayers, who wrote in, countries with the death penalty have a much higher homicide rate than those that don't. Society should want to do what they can to ensure that less of their members are victims of homicide. And as we know, it costs a lot more to use the death penalty than to house someone for life in a penitentiary. So it seems like a split argument there from Carson.
Yeah, but with life in a penitentiary, there's always a chance that that person gets out. I remember years ago reading a story about two men who drove a 11-year-old girl from San Francisco to Texas, and they audio taped what they did to her. That's what changed my mind on the death penalty. There is no way that those two men would be rehabilitated. No possibility. And in my mind, they had to be executed. The things that wouldn't repeat what they did.
But again,
there's some evil there, and it has to be addressed.
I don't think you can make this decision on the clear-cut extreme examples. To me, this decision has to be made in the gray area, because that's the part that we don't have solid answers on, and that's where there's no recourse after the
But
death
states
penalty.
don't have that choice. Right now, they're trying to say, abolish or maintain. And I get to have it both ways when I say, you know, the Pettit case, or if you remember that, what that pediatrician in Delaware did to those hundreds and hundreds of kids, you know. I think, like most of us, I have a special place in hell for people who hurt children, let alone kill children. And if I'm sitting on a jury, as much as I understand exactly what Andrew, and I agree with what Andrew's saying, I don't know if the father in me would be able to reconcile that with the practical part. And I think that's what they're struggling with now. Let's go to Maureen. She's calling us from Yonkers. Maureen, how about you? Again, a tough call here. The death penalty, as we've learned, is not a perfect science. Should it be off the books because of what we're learning with science, with stuff like DNA?
No, I definitely believe it should be back. It should be on. Any perpetrator that violates, goes out and violates and hurts innocent people, he should be put to death. That's it. No questions asked. Shouldn't even have an attorney. They should lose all their rights.
How about, at the least, immediate DNA testing on every potential death row case? I mean, let's not have this go 10, 15
And
years.
let's be clear,
until we
that's
get
not the case
DNAs
right
on
now.
record. No, it's
people
not.
are being refused DNA
But how
tests
about
right
every capital case gets DNA testing so that we stop this as quickly as we can if we got the wrong person locked up?
I think DNA cuts both ways. I mean, you have DNA that has exonerated people, but I think DNA can just as well prove someone's guilt.
Sure.
Absolutely. I think we use every bit of science that you can get your hands on to prove the case one way or the other.
All right. Dominic, you're being a little quiet right here because usually you're the guy who's always in the middle on this one. New York.
No,
And
and
you decided
if we're
they
going
weren't
and if we're
gonna
going to
do
be honest about
Yeah.
it, I'm torn because it's people of color that are
Yeah.
going to go to the death penalty. If we're going to keep it real and be honest with each other, so I'm really torn about this because I am a law and order guy, and if it's people of color committing these heinous crimes that warrant the death penalty, then so be it. But it's very gray. It's not so clear cut. And that's not to insinuate that it's only minorities committing
No,
crimes.
but it depends what kind of counsel you can
You're
afford.
so
Yeah.
much more likely to get the death penalty than I would
wait,
be.
Richard,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. A lot of this depends on how much can you afford to pay your lawyer. Bottom line.
Yep. Let's go to Diana. She's calling us out of Brooklyn. Diana, where do you fall on this issue?
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
The reason why I call is because we have no right of killing anybody. Is because we had no right to judge anyone. And I think that we should just do hard time, like 30 years or life in prison in case somebody kills you or kill them. But we have no right killing other people, no matter what, because we're not here to judge.
Okay, well, we have to judge in that's what the law enforcement system, that's what the judicial system, the penal system is about. It's about judgment and then trying to mitigating the right kind of punishment. In terms of playing God, I totally understand.
Every major
this
religion.
argument. Listen, exactly, every major faith here. And, you know, the Catholic Church has been one of the most vocal opponents of the death penalty for the very argument you made that nobody should be playing God other than if you believe in it, the man upstairs.